can tell you, having been here at PLU for over 15 years, you have chosen an amazing place to get your education. I was talking to a new faculty colleague just today, and she was commenting on just how nice everyone is here at PLU. And I can say, without exception, the people who you'll be receiving your education from are just good, kind, caring people. And all of us have an interest in your success and you having a wonderful experience here at PLU. So this is the beginning. That right now you have lots of hopes, lots of dreams, and I'm confident that as you now enter into your graduate programs, you will find that this is just an amazing place to get your degree. So I want to talk tonight for just a few minutes about hope and some of the things that I have learned over the course of my career as I've studied this concept of hope. We are living in incredibly uncertain times with the pandemic, with the violence that is happening against people of color. There is so much uncertainty and so much anxiety. But hope is so relevant in these times because hope is something that we have in spite of evidence of the contrary. And hope is something that we can choose in times of uncertainty. And so my goal today is to give you some ideas, some tools that might help you to choose hope. Now, I've come to see hope kind of like our heartbeat. And if we were to engage in some activity, we could increase our heartbeat. If we engage in breathing exercises, we could decrease our heartbeat. And so like our heartbeat, hope, it keeps us going. And we don't have to tell it to keep us going in order for our heart to continue to beat. And that's the same with hope. Hope is always present, but we can do things to intentionally increase our hope and magnify its influence in our lives. As McGeer said, to live a life devoid of hope is simply not to live a human life. It is not to function, or tragically, it is to cease to function as a human being. Hope is ever present. We see this ever so clearly in Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And amidst all the other reading you might do, if this is a book you haven't read, I would highly recommend it. It is about his experiences in the Nazi concentration camps and a theory of therapy that came out of those experiences. He says this: those who know how close the connection is between the state of mind of man, his courage and hope, or lack of them, and the state of immunity of his body will understand that the sudden loss of hope and courage can have a deadly effect. The prisoner who had lost faith in the future, or hope, was doomed. He let himself decline and become subject to mental and physical decay. We all feared this moment, not for ourselves, which would have been pointless, but for our friends. Usually it began with the prisoner refusing one morning to get dressed and wash or go out on the parade grounds. No entreaties, no blows, no threats had any effect. He just lay there hardly moving. If this crisis was brought on by an illness, he refused to be taken to the sick bay or do anything to help himself. He simply gave up, and there he remained, and nothing bothered him anymore. And so again, I say, to live a life devoid of hope is simply not to live a human life. Hope's power in our lives comes from intentional practices. My own research has convinced me that hope is a great mediator between making a goal and reaching that goal. Hope is what gets us from what you want and what you desire to actually getting it done. The pathway to success must go through hope. Research over the last several decades has supported what hope does. For example, it's associated with higher educational achievement, improved athletic performance, physical health, coping. In my therapy world, it certainly helps therapy outcomes. It helps in the workplace to retain employees. And I thought this one was particularly interesting, given our current climate, is that hope helps with collective action. In this recent study, they looked at the effects of anger and hope to promote social movements. And here's what they found. We argue that the potential effectiveness of anger in generating social change could be explained by the feelings of hope it lights up, which in turn mobilize people to act, right? And so as people take their anger, their legitimate anger for wrongs that are happening, and combine them with a hope future, that is what inspires and ignites action. And so tonight, in order to help you harness hope's power in a more intentional way, I will present a theory of hope and describe some specific strategies that you can use. My hope is that these strategies can help you better achieve your goals and dreams amidst the face in our society and in our. So let's look at this theory briefly. Hope can be defined as a belief and a feeling that a desired outcome is possible. And I think it's significant that this definition includes both the head and the heart, right? Hope can be something that comes in our minds, that we think about the future in a different way, but hope is also an emotion. It's a feeling that we have that compels us forward. Hope's foundations, there's 4 foundations of hope: options, external evidence, action, and connection. Options represents the foundation of options. It's built on the belief and the feeling that you have options to choose from to reach your desired outcome. Obviously, the more options you have, the more paths you have, the more hopeful you will be. External evidence is built on evidence from outside of yourself that the outcome is possible. The action foundation is built on the belief and feeling that you're willing and able to act in order to reach your desired outcomes. In other words, it's your feelings of self-efficacy. And finally, the connection foundation is built on our relationships. Hope is inherently increased as we are connected to others. And in fact, I have found that sometimes people may not have the other 3 foundations, but when they are connected to other people or to a higher power, or even to pets, but connected to something, that hope can sustain them until options, action, and other foundations present themselves. So you can see here in a visual diagram of this theory of hope. One of the things that you can notice is the interconnectedness of each of the foundations. As we increase or decrease in any one of the foundations, it will have a ripple effect on the other foundations of hope. In addition, as I just said, you don't have to have solid foundations in all of them for you to still have a sense of hope in moving forward towards your goals. So to illustrate this theory, let me tell you a story. I loved watching Oprah when she was on TV. I think she's still on TV, on cable somewhere, but it's much harder to find, and I don't watch her anymore. But when she was on, I loved to watch Oprah, and particularly to learn about the stories of people and challenges that they've overcome. So here's a story I once heard as I was watching her show. Growing up, sisters Susie and Nancy were as close as 2 people could be. They were practically inseparable, singing, dancing, and playing their way through childhood, and they remained best of friends through adulthood. In 1978, when Susie was just 33 years old, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Nancy said that in 1978, nobody talked about breast cancer. Doctors barely knew how to treat it. There was no internet, of course, no 1-800 numbers. There were no support groups for young patients. When Susie was diagnosed, Nancy said that people talked about it as if it was an automatic death sentence. She said that people would cross the street when they saw her sister because they thought the disease was contagious. It was this type of ignorance that Nancy was determined to change. And in 1983, Nancy organized the first Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure. Nancy's dream was that the race would give people hope. She said, quote, "I was so disturbed at the way people talked about breast cancer. We've got to put hope in this thing. We've got to lighten up the landscape somehow. We have to educate people." She said that she hoped that this would be the event that would help people relate and bond and celebrate survivorship and celebrate hope. That's the most important thing, she said, the hope. And so if we look at what Nancy did to start this great movement, the Race for the Cure, right? We can see the 4 foundations of hope, each playing a role in the incredible movement of Race for the Cure that has raised billions of dollars and influenced millions of people, right? They brought vans and and provided financial resources. They had external evidence and seen other people who had survived. There's a clear message that something can be done. And probably most important was the connection and the bonding that happens at these races. And so you can see in this example, all 4 foundations of hope. Whenever I see successful movements or successful people, I can link their success to these 4 foundations. And so let me discuss for a minute these 4 foundations and give you some ideas that might help you increase those foundations in your own life and possibly help others who you interact with as they seek their own goals and dreams. So first, the foundation of hope, number 1, action. Action is divided into 2 components, our willingness and our ability. Willingness has to do with having a clear and specific vision of your desired outcome. When you know what you really want, your willingness will follow. Our ability comes from seeing ourselves as capable. Let's talk about each of these briefly. Building a clear vision. In the Bible, there's a verse that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I have come to see that when we don't have a vision for where we're going or what we want, we get lost. And so part of starting the process of having more hope is getting clear on what you want and framing what we want in positive ways. We can spend a lot of time, I work in therapy quite a bit with people who can come and they can tell me 10 things they don't want. But they struggle to think about, well, instead of, if those things weren't there anymore, what will be there instead? And so take time and think about and get rid of the don't wants and think about and envision what it is you do want. Because it is that vision that will compel you to be willing to do what it takes. One of the things I like to do is encourage people to imagine themselves a month out, a year out, right? And imagine that you have accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. What did you accomplish, right? Get specific and then prioritize your life around those goals and dreams and say no to good but less important opportunities. And I think this is a key thing. And as you're in grad school, you're going to have to say no to some good but less important opportunities so that you can invest and put into your education everything that it deserves. Along the path, often we deal with indecision. And when we're in that space of indecision, it drives away our willingness to act. So a couple tips and ideas for that is, instead of sitting in that space for indecision, make a decision and set a time frame for sticking with that decision before you're going to reevaluate, right? Put your energy into moving instead of energy into deciding. I find that it's often better to go down a road and find out it's the wrong one than to have never started the movement in that direction. Right? So get yourself out of indecision, decide. If it turns out to be wrong, fine, then you'll know that you need to move to a different decision. The second aspect of action was ability. You can help yourself here by monitoring the messages that you send to yourself throughout the day, right? I don't think it's just in the clinical population that I work with that people have a challenge with the negative self-talk. The problem of regularly having negative thoughts pass through our brain and us allowing them to stay stuck there. And so I would encourage you to think about and to actively challenge the negativity that sometimes passes through our own heads. Right? We can acknowledge it, and maybe it's telling us there's some things we need to learn, some areas we need to grow, but don't let it get stuck, right? And surround yourself with people who believe in you. one of my hopes for you in your grad programs is that you will be surrounded by people who believe in you. And I hope you can be a person to your colleagues in your programs who sees them for what they're capable of, and that you comment on the strengths of your fellow classmates. An activity I did in a class was people had to write a letter to a colleague and point out to them all the things that they appreciated about that colleague. And this was after having a couple years together in the program. And it was amazing, right, to see the power of learning how you had positively impacted another person. So share those things with each other, build each other up, help each other see each other as capable human beings, able to accomplish that which you've set out to accomplish in your programs. Foundation number 2 is options. With the internet, often you set a goal, there's too many options. That seems to be more of a problem than not having any options at all. And the challenge seems to be setting aside time to explore what options you want to pursue. In addition, when it comes to options, often we find ourselves confronting obstacles that as we have a goal and we want to get there, stuff happens that it is challenging. I'd invite you to watch a TED Talk by Bo Lotto. It's really fascinating. The only challenge is he's wearing a low-cut shirt and his chest is open, so it's kind of distracting. Anyway, but what he shares is really, really fascinating. And it's about optical illusions. And he teaches that the same sensory data that falls on our eyes can have different meaning based on our past experiences. So the same information, I might see something because of my past, or I might have that sensory data in my eyes, and I'll see one thing, and you, because of your past, will see something different, right? And so we can learn to view obstacles in our lives as opportunities. And some of you have had to do that, and you've learned that well. Others really struggle. And so if that's a struggle for you, I'd invite you to try and pause in those moments when obstacles come, to pause and to say, okay, what is it I'm supposed to learn here? And how can I see this obstacle as an opportunity? One obstacle that many face is anxiety. And I like to remind my students about this diagram that research has shown to be true across many, many studies. And that is that anxiety is related to performance, meaning when we have low levels of anxiety, we don't perform as well. When we have really high level of anxiety, we also don't perform as well. But in that middle section of anxiety, we perform at our best. And sometimes we experience anxiety and we just want to run away from it. We don't want it to be around. But instead, we should embrace it, right? We should embrace it. And part of being in grad school is you're going to experience, hopefully, some anxiety. And that anxiety can propel you to do better than you could if you run away from it. And so embrace the anxiety that's associated with learning, with growing, with being around new people, people who don't think like you. Embrace that anxiety and allow it to help you along your path of growth. Foundation number 3 is external evidence. This is about being able to look outside yourself to find others who have achieved similar goals. And I think PLU is a great environment to find people who have accomplished similar goals. Talk to your faculty. If you are wondering, has anybody done this? My guess is there probably is a student or an alumni who has done what you want to do, right? And that faculty will have stories to tell you about people who have accomplished the types of goals that you want to accomplish. And as you hear those stories, that will build your own sense of confidence that you as well can accomplish your goals and dreams. And finally, foundation number 4 is connection. Research finds that loneliness has a more negative impact on health than smoking and obesity. This time of COVID has really challenged our ability to connect with people. In some ways, it can be more challenging. In other ways, it's provided us greater opportunity through the use of technology that we can connect in ways that we didn't before. But just connecting or being around people is not the same as the type of connection I'm talking about. I'm talking about really connecting and getting to know people. That's the type of connection that builds hope. So make time for this, plan it out, make time to spend time with your classmates, make time to spend time with people who you care about. Connect, if you believe in a higher power, connect with your higher power. Go out in nature, connect with your pets, whatever it is. Find and build that time into your life to create connection, because connection inherently increases hope. Another aspect of connection that I think is so important is that in order to connect with others and really connect, is we have to have cultural knowledge and sensitivity. We have to pay attention to power and privilege. We have to understand that when someone comes and interacts with me as a white, male, highly educated person, right, that I represent something to them that may be positive or may be challenging. And so I have to understand that intersection of who I am and who that person is to be able to create a space where we can really connect. And so if this is a total foreign language to you, send me an email. There's plenty to learn as it relates to power and privilege. Hopefully this is something you've been thinking about and that you're working on to be able to connect with people across cultures and across communities. A recent study by Cigna found that Generation Zers, which are adults 18 to 22, which some of you fall in, but some of you maybe are just getting out of, and a few of you are probably way out of it. But the generation just above Zers are just behind Generation Z in having this problem. They found that Generation Zers were more likely than any other generation to say they experience the feelings described in the statements associated with loneliness, feeling alone, isolated, left out, that there's no one they can talk to. In fact, more than half of Gen Zers identified 10 of the 11 feelings associated with loneliness, feeling like people around them are not really with them, feeling shy and feeling like no one really knows them well, right? And what's fascinating by that, right, is this is a generation that has so much ability to connect virtually, and yet they feel alone. And so in this time when we do have to connect virtually, it is still possible to have real connection. My colleague Elizabeth, we all are doing some telehealth, and she has talked about how she's finding ways to still really connect with people across the internet and providing therapy. And so there are ways to do that, but it takes a little extra work. Get to know others and let others get to know you. Learn their names and use them. Let me just share a story about this briefly. I had a professor in my undergrad who, in a class of 200 people, at the end of the first day, he had a old video camera, and as you walked out of class, he asked you to say your name and where you're from. And when we showed up the next time, he called you by name. He took the time to get to know every name of every student in that class so that he was able to know each person by name. In a book that my wife, her dad had her read this book, a book by Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends or How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said this: remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So learn each other's names, get to know each other. Creating hope through connection is about knowing others and being known. Finally, I'll just say, as you are on this path and challenges come, remember why you chose this path. I find that when I get discouraged, remembering my why really helps me get back to that hopeful place, right? Why have I decided to do whatever it is I'm doing? Go back to that, and that can help you along your path to stay hopeful. And finally, pay attention to signs of burnout. Think about the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that you engage in when you are getting burned out, and do things to actively take care of yourself. And if I was going to give you one thing, I've been talking last year quite a bit with one of our faculty members in kinesiology about all the research that is coming out on exercise and mental health. And if I could tell you one thing to do, it's to get out and get your heart rate up on a regular basis. And that will help you to stay hopeful. It will help you to manage the stresses and the challenges that are happening. I don't know about you, but my favorite way of exercise was taken away through COVID. And so I've had to find new ways to get out and be active. And so get creative, but get out and be active. And for goodness sake, right now with our weather being so nice, take advantage of it, because it won't be like this for very much longer. As you implement and have hope in your own life, it allows you to be a beacon of hope for others. And I think part of our job is to create a space where hope can prevail. That's part of our sacred task. Excuse me. And so, as you work on your own goals and dreams, as you build on your own foundations of hope, it allows you to be a beacon of hope for others. I think part of one of the great things about an educational experience, right, and getting an education is that it inherently creates hope. Right? It creates opportunities. And I hope that your journey here at PLU is amazing, and that you have the opportunity to live out your goals and your dreams as a result of choosing PLU as a place to do your education. Thank you very much.